Hello, my name is Montell Newville, Police Ethics Advisor. I'm here today with...
Hi, I'm Will Hodgkinson. I am the head of the Professional Standards Department for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire Constabularies.
So today we're going to discuss the Code of Ethics. What are the Code of Ethics?
So it's a tricky question. There's a very short answer, but let me go back to why we have it and how it's formed. So like most changes in policing, it comes from a moment of criticality and public uproar. And this was in the early 90s under the Conservative government led by John Major. There was a scandal where the media had reported that two Conservative members of Parliament were allegedly receiving cash from Mohammed Al-Fayed, the owner of Harrods, who's died, but now under I think, hundreds of people reporting criminal concerns about him. It was suggested that he was paying these Conservative members of Parliament to raise questions in parliamentary time. Whereas what they should be doing, obviously, is representing the interest of their constituents. And it was called the Cash for Questions scandal. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Major, John Major?
John Major, yes.
I had a moment there. John Major commissioned and set up what was called the a Committee for Standards in Public Life. And the first chair was Lord Nolan. And in 1995, so 30 years ago now, Lord Nolan published 7 principles. And those 7 principles set out the expectations for all of those in public life, whether that be police, whether that be councillors, members of parliament,
health secretary,
health, fire,
education.
Right, so all of those public office. So you're holding a public office, and there were 7, and from those 7, they were called the Nolan Principles. It then formed into the Code of Ethics. So all of those institutions said, right, these are the principles, and you can trace each Code of Ethics back to it, but each institution, and policing is our example today, develops their own Code of Ethics aligned to the Nolan Principles and defined what the expectations were in that profession. So the 7 principles are as follows, and when you hear them, you'll understand the link and parallels to the standards of professional behaviour. So the first one is selflessness. It says holders of public office should act solely in terms of public interest. So everything they should do should be focused on public benefit, public interest. Second one was integrity, and the Honesty Integrity podcast that we did goes through that. But integrity features holders of public office must avoid placing themselves under any obligation of people or organisations that may try to influence them in their work. So the story that was always explained to me was that if you go to the fish and chip shop and that you, as a police officer, and you pay for your, you go to pay for your fish and chips, and they say, "Don't worry, the chips are free. Just pay for your fish." And I said, at that point, you may think that's wholly innocent. But at that point, if that happens every Friday, every time you're on shift, when something happens in that fish bar and the owner says, "But I give you free chips all the time," right? You go, "I'm compromised. I'm not, how can I be impartial? You're trying to exert influence over me because you've given me a benefit that I wasn't entitled to." So that was always the example type to me of, don't abuse your position and get things for free. That shouldn't happen, because in that situation where something does happen, you're not impartial. So integrity was standard 2. Objectivity is linked to it in carrying out public business, making appointments, awarding contracts, recommending individuals for reward and recognition. You should base your choices on merit only. Not which club you're from, which family someone's from, what associations they are, which school they went to, based on merit. The next one was accountability. And this is obviously very big in policing, that you are accountable for your decisions and actions to the public who pay for you. And you must submit themselves to scrutiny necessary to ensure this. I really like that line. So, you know, in policing, we have lots of scrutiny panels where we invite checks and challenge, and it came from that position 30 years ago. Next one is, I would call transparency, was called openness, that you should make yourself as open as possible. So in policing, if someone is going to a misconduct hearing, a hearing which could result in their dismissal, it's available to members of the public. You can dial in and see it online. You can attend in person. It is open. And if something isn't going to be open, the office holder should be held to account and give the reasons why. So you can't just say it's private. You have to give a rationale and expect challenge. So it's a big thing to not have openness. The presumption is openness. Next one is honesty. There we go. Or not being dishonest. So it says that individuals have a duty to declare any private interests relating to their duties and must take steps to resolve any conflicts arising in a way that protects the public interest. So going back to that cash for questions point, member of the Parliament, why are you posing that question? Well, I've allegedly just been given a certain amount of money by a very wealthy man. No, you have to be honest. You have to not be dishonest and have that sort of hidden vested interest. And the last one is leadership. So holders of public office should promote and support these principles by leading and providing an example. So the expectation is you don't just follow, you lead, you set the example, you become someone who explains and articulates and makes sure other individuals understand the expectations of them, and you champion them. So that happened in 1995. The most recent code of ethics really built on them and tried to provide some guiding principles which underpin the standards. And they're not, I like the phrase that he says, do the right things in the right way for the right reasons. And I really like that strap line because I think everyone can understand it. But it talks about leading with respect and empathy, trying to understand, trying to listen, and not going in with a series of assumptions. It talks about courage. And courage here isn't in the traditional sense that you might imagine of. There's a fire, run into the burning flames. It isn't about that. It's the courage to make difficult decisions on the basis that you are there to uphold the standards of the institution. So if it's a policing context and you see someone who's maybe more senior and they're doing something that you know is wrong, the code of ethics says the expectation is you are courageous and you challenge that behaviour. And the last one is public service, that everything you do, you should be able to understand, how is this benefiting my public, the public that I have the honour of serving? And if you can't think of a good reason, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. So there are three phrases, so respect and empathy, courage, and public service. And these are underpinning values which emanate from the standards expected for all of those holders of public office. And that's what the Code of Ethics is. So it's sort of an underpinning guide to help officers and staff navigate through situations, and they're trying to do so in an ethical way. And coming under that, we have a series of ethical conversations to say, or challenging conversations to say, here's this situation, we could deal with it in a number of ways, but what's the most ethical way of dealing with it? And that's talked through and people get to check and challenge. And that's quite a healthy way of raising things. So a point that is often contentious is, should police officers have tattoos, open tattoos on display? And even then, some forces will say, no, not in this constabulary. And other forces will say, we think it's okay. We'll allow them in. So you have different ethical viewpoints based on standards. But the Code of Ethics tries to bring a consistent standard and support leaders in teasing out what the right thing to do is.
And what I really liked about what you were talking about there is when you mentioned courage, you also mentioned leadership, and you're talking about the institutions. Most people who are ordinary members of the public will come across a constable, but we both know that there's senior leaders in policing who've got different ranks and different areas of responsibility. And as you were talking through each of those standards in public life, I was thinking about chief inspectors and superintendents and chief supers, and do they have the courage to ensure they're doing the right thing. Can you just talk to us a bit more about being a senior leader and the word courage and leadership and how that would impact them in their role?
Yeah, so if you look on the College of Policing website, which probably mainly gets visited by cops and staff members, under each role, so under my role as a chief super, it lists the leadership behaviours expected. And the first three, and I know it's not hierarchical, but the first three talk about upholding the highest standards of professional behaviour. Right, so it talks about ethical, really strong ethical base, and being a champion for standards. So primarily when you're, in my view, and based on role profile, you're testing whether someone is suited to become a leader. First and foremost, you're saying, are they a champion for the right standards? And if they are not, yes, you might have done all these things and the operation you're very good, but if you're doing it in the wrong way, then you can't be in that position of seniority because you're falling down on your professionalism. And obviously what you want is both. You want people who are operationally very competent and very good, but also champions of the standards. So I don't think it was unintentional. I think it's intentional that the first things you look at for role profiles are how significant a leadership role does the rank and position have in terms of upholding the highest standards that are expected in the office of constable and to be a police officer.
That was really well explained and very clear for me. Thank you very much.
I hope so.
Excellent. So I've been Montell Newville, Police Ethics Advisor, and we've been listening to...
Thank you for your patience. Will Hodgkinson, Head of the Professional Standards Department for the three forces, Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire.